Man, what a year it has been. Not one, not two, but three catastrophic hurricanes hit Florida. We had Hurricane Debbie made landfall in Big Bend around August 2024. We had Hurricane Helen made landfall September 2024 near Perry, Florida. Category 4 with winds up to 140 miles an hour. And then, of course, finally we had Hurricane Milton that made landfall day before my birthday, October 9th, 2024, about siesta key, give or take, as a category 3 with wind miles up to about 100 miles an hour. The area near us, Sarasota, Manatee County, hit pretty bad, closer to the ocean, inland, kind of where we are. Lakewood Ranch, not too bad. We're going to dig in. We're going to talk about all of those. I was just in Lido Beach, Lido Key, and Siesta Key, and I'll show you some footage. It's still just devastating. Sand and debris. So now the question, what do homeowners do? Big predicament. Do they rebuild their homes or do they get out of Florida? So that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Like I said, I'm going to show you kind of the big picture of what we're seeing and hearing throughout the state. We're going to drill down, talk a little bit more about what happened in Lakewood Ranch and some of the issues that are facing homeowners here in Florida. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Let's dive in. Hey, by the way, if this is your first time checking out our channel, hello and welcome. If you are a returning viewer, hello, welcome back. My name is Adam Miller with the 941 Lifestyle Group. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a lifestyle matchmaker. So glad you found the channel. Glad you're tuning into this one as well too. It's kind of a new strategy for us, I guess, new topic of video. So we hope to be a kind of a go-to resource for kind of all things Florida, moving to Florida, living in Florida, just kind of giving you an update of what's happening, and of course, real estate as well too. So here is the article that came out from the Associated Press. Will people leave Florida after devastating hurricanes? History suggests not. It's kind of giving away the title, giving away the answer just in the title, but I read this article and I was like, wow, it was interesting. So the news rippled through Treasure Island, Florida, which, just so you know, is in and around the Tampa area, almost like a third storm. The mayor planned to move off the barrier island a month after Hurricane Helene flooded tens of thousands of homes along the Gulf Coast, and 2 weeks after Hurricane Milton also ravaged the state. This surprised the heck out of me. Not really surprised me, but it's kind of one of those wow factors. So Mayor Tyler Payne's home had been flooded and damaged beyond repair. Happened to a lot of people in the area. I know a lot of people. He and his husband can't afford to rebuild, so he was stepping down as the mayor. So while it pains my heart to make this decision in the midst of our recovery from Hurricanes Helene and Milton, this is the best decision for me and my family. He had held office for more than 3 years and was a fourth generation Treasure Island resident. Up and down Florida's storm-battered Gulf Coast, residents are making the same calculations about whether they should go or stay. Can they afford to build? What will insurance cover? And we're going to talk about insurance as well too. People considering moving to Florida are contemplating whether it's worth the risk to come to a hurricane-prone state. I mean, you get 3 hurricanes back to back to back. And these existential questions about Florida's appeal are raised regularly after the state experienced a busy hurricane season, such as in 2004 when 4 hurricanes crossed the Sunshine State. So if moves into the state offer any answer, the hurricanes have served little as deterrence. Florida's population has grown by 1/3 to 23 million residents in the last 2 decades since Charlie, Francis, and Jean and Ivan ravaged the state. Last year, 2023, Florida added more than 365,000 residents, second only to Texas. I didn't get a chance to pull up the statistics for this year, but I've heard that number has changed a little bit. A lot of people moving for a whole lot of reasons, politics, prices. It used to be cheap. A lot of people moved here during the pandemic. On the other hand, there are signs that Florida's white-hot real estate market has cooled. Sales of single-family homes were down 12% in September compared with the same time the previous year. And I have statistics for the state. I have statistics for Sarasota and Manatee County. We'll drill down. We'll talk about those too. I also tried to pull up some statistics to see what happened in our area, at least right after the storm. It's hard to pinpoint exactly because you don't know all the reasons for some of the statistics we'll talk about, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So what happens after a storm? So studies of hurricanes along the Gulf Coast have shown that any outbound migration tends to be short-lived. And if people do leave, it's usually a short distance move, such as from a barrier island to the mainland. Older people with more financial resources are more likely to return to devastated communities. Now, we've seen this be forged too. Wealthy people tend to be in a better financial position that they can start to rebuild sooner than later, whether that's with insurance's help or without insurance's help. We've seen that. We drove down to Sanibel after the hurricane last year, 2023, and we saw quickly that there were multi-million-dollar houses that were starting to be rebuilt. And again, I don't know if that was with insurance or without insurance, but it's usually the case where the poor people with not a lot of money have to go through the insurance, and that usually takes a while. And this is something that we're looking to see if we see any movement from people moving away from the Gulf Coast to inland where we are, Sarasota, Lakewood Ranch. It's hard to tell yet. I mean, it's only November, and I've not noticed a whole ton of houses being listed for sale along the coast. Not an excessive amount to give you the indication that people are doing that one, but I'm going to guess there are going to be people, that's just my gut, that people are going to maybe fix their house, maybe as best as they can, or completely fix it, sell it, and then move inland so they don't have to deal with as much risk. But in the 3 years after hurricane, home prices in areas of Florida that were hit by one are 5% higher on average than elsewhere in the state because of similar supply. New homeowners tend to be richer than previous ones since wealthier buyers can absorb price increases. Yes, that's what I was going to say. And then other factors that determine how quickly communities bounce back include whether homes were insured. Doing my research for this one, it is mind-blowing to see and hear how many people don't even have insurance because it's just not worth it. The costs are astronomical, and we'll talk about that as well too. The speed of insurance reimbursements and whether there are enough construction workers. Now you think about that. I drove, like I said, through Lido and Siesta Key yesterday, and the amount of construction vehicles was noticeable and kind of overwhelming. And considering that's just 2 beach areas, that's not including St. Pete, which was decimated, Tampa, which was decimated, south of us in Venice, which was decimated. There's still construction going on in Sanibel and in Fort Myers Beach. And that's a whole other issue for a whole different conversation, especially if we're going to be kicking 11 million people out of the country. I know a lot of immigrants are in the construction business. That's a whole different topic of conversation. Other factors that determine how quickly communities bounce back, whether or not they were insured, speed of insurance reimbursements, and whether or not there was enough construction workers. Because of stricter building codes implemented in the years after Hurricane Andrew devastated South Florida, newer homes can withstand hurricanes better than older ones. We have a listing that we just listed for sale. It has windows that can protect the home up to 140 miles an hour. Plus they have hurricane insurance as well too. So in the short term and in the long term, recent storms offer examples of what happened to communities both short term and long term. So in Lee County, home to Fort Myers, Hurricane Ian, which decimated the area, made landfall 2 years ago in what had been one of the fastest growing parts of the United States. Population growth slowed afterwards to 1.5% from 4.4 before the storm. The number of households dropped from 340,000 to 326,000 according to the U.S. Census Bureau. That's not big. That's 14,000 people left. Not a lot. In 2019, 3/4 of all United Van Lines truck moves were into Lee County, and 1/4 were outbound. But that dropped to 2/3 inbound and 1/3 outbound in 2023 and 2024. So that I thought was interesting. And then the next article that I found, first of all, drop a comment down below. What are your thoughts on that one too? Drop a comment down below too. Where are you currently watching this video from? I'm always intrigued whether or not you're watching from Florida, because we have found out that almost half the people that are moving to our area, Lakewood Ranch area, are actually moving from within the states. The rest are moving from elsewhere around the country, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, the Midwest, but a vast majority are moving from the state. So next up, Florida communities hit 3 times by hurricanes grapple with how and whether to rebuild. Similar article, also by the AP. But I read this and I was like, man, it really put things into perspective. So it was just a month ago, this article, by the way, was from October. It was just a month ago that Brooke Harris left the state-issued emergency trailer where her and her family had lived since Hurricane Idalia slammed her Gulf Coast fishing village back in August 2023. So just a few months ago, that means she was in there for probably close to a year, and she is not alone. There are people living in emergency trailers, which is great that they've got a place to live, but unfortunately, I do not believe that they have one of those for everybody who was displaced. And her husband were just still finishing the electrical work in the home that they painstakingly rebuilt themselves, wiping out their savings to do so, which is not unfamiliar either. They never will finish that wiring job. Why? Because Hurricane Helene blew their newly renovated home off its 4-foot-high pilings, sending it floating into the neighbor's next yard. I read that. It's just so brutal. And you always think, there's no way it can happen again. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced this in the history of hurricanes. Yes, you are definitely not alone. For the third time in 13 months, this windswept stretch of Florida's Big Bend took a direct hit from the hurricane. A 1-2-3 punch to a 50-mile-an-hour sliver of the state's more than 8,400 miles. First Idalia, then Hurricane Debbie in August, and now Helene. It's just brutal. Hey, by the way, if you like these types of videos, do me a big favor. Would you just subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up, drop a comment down below. It does wonders for the algorithm. It sends a message to YouTube that you and others like you want to see content like this. So they tend to show it to more people. So I appreciate you doing that one. All right, let me move on and talk about the insurance and the insurance issue that seems to be having a huge impact on Florida residents, ourselves included. Now, I've done some videos about the insurance nightmare that's taking place here in Florida, but I want to take you back a little bit to kind of talk about what happened. So nearly 2 weeks after Helene hit, and even before Milton had arrived, this Florida resident describes an insurance nightmare had only begun, and she has already faced delays and denials on her damage claims. Insurance companies, right? You love them and you hate them. We did everything that we were supposed to do. She lives in Madera Beach, outside of Tampa. We did everything to protect ourselves and to protect our homes. Fresh off a 1-2 punch of Helene and Milton, hurricane victims in Florida, even those with insurance, face a challenging recovery, which is terrible. If you have insurance, you should be able to take care of it. But of course, insurance companies don't always necessarily agree with that. So according to Mark Freelander, Director of Corporate Communications for the Insurance Information Institute, which represents the insurance industry, homeowners insurance companies are categorizing the storms as 2 separate events, meaning anyone who did not or could not document damage from Helene could face even greater odds that their claim will be denied if they were hit by both storms. Man, talk about a big middle finger to the residents of Florida who were affected with this. In a statement, FEMA said it is simplifying its claims process so that it will only consolidate 2 loss claims in a circumstance where there would be no loss of recovery to the policyholder. Meanwhile, reforms enacted in Florida to encourage insurance companies to re-enter the state market have ended up leaving victims with little recourse to challenge the claims. So we'll talk about that in a little bit as well too. For the vast majority of affected residents, the financial loss from the storms will be nearly total. That's because flooding caused much of the property damage, and most homeowner insurance do not cover flood impact. Gosh, such a scam. In the areas of Florida most affected by the storms, more than 25% of residents had separate flood insurance prior to the storms. And for those who do have insurance, the combination of the storms is set to create a major complication. So here it is. The insurance company is categorizing Hurricane Helene as an almost entirely flood-driven event, while Hurricane Milton was both a wind and a rain event. Experts say property owners who lacked flood insurance may not be protected from water damage from Milton either, thanks to the way that many insurance policies are written these days. That's so terrible. In a situation like this, chances are very, very good that your insurance will deny your claim right out of the gate if you don't have flood insurance. Because so much damage from Helene came from flooding, losses that insurance are facing from the storm are projected to be modest. It's too soon to tell how many homes could end up having claims from both Helene and Milton, but in such cases, could be challenging to make the determinations. So things that I talked about before, it's 2. So first of all, the crushing financial burden for homeowners. So families in Florida are drowning in expenses overall. On average, they pay a staggering $3,300 more each year than the national average for home insurance. That's money that can be used for other necessities, but instead it's being swallowed up by insurance premiums. And the financial strain is obviously causing anxiety and frustration on top of everything that happened with the hurricanes. So the last resort was citizens property insurance. So many families are desperate and can't find property insurance or property insurance companies willing to cover their homes. They have no choice but to turn to citizens property insurance, the insurance of the last resort. But here's the scary part. So Citizens was getting overwhelmed because more families were depending on it, and they were never meant to be the primary source of insurance. And that is because most of the largest insurance companies in the state of Florida left because it's kind of risk reward, and the risk wound up being too high, so they left. So everyone who needed insurance, not everyone, but a vast majority of people who needed insurance had no choice but to go to the last resort, which was Citizens, which was never meant to be a primary source for insurance. And then here's the happened. The real fear is that Citizens might not be able to handle a severe hurricane season. Imagine if everyone in your neighborhood needed to take money from the piggy bank after a huge storm. That piggy bank would quickly run out of money and they could potentially go bankrupt. So the governor, DeSantis, created a My Safe Florida home program for disasters. It was supposed to make homes stronger and safer by giving families up to $10,000, but it's been a mess. The program quickly ran out of money, and now there's more complicated rules, and many families who applied last year are stuck waiting, feeling helpless, feeling angry. And the program reopened after shutting down for a little bit with new rules, but they're only making things even worse. The money was given out in stages, and many families who needed the money were left out in the cold. It's like promising kids that they can play a game and then telling them they have to wait forever, right? So the harsh reality is that families are being crushed by skyrocketing home insurance costs because of the constant threat of hurricanes and natural disasters. They're turning to Citizens property insurance in desperation, but there's a terrifying risk that it won't be able to help everybody. So we'll see if my Safe Florida home program gets fixed. But there are also some other repercussions of these storms that are happening. And I'm not going to go through all of these because I've done a video about it, but I'm just kind of going to zip through some of the bullet points. So increased insurance premiums and reduced availability of coverage, heightened demand for hurricane-resistant features in new construction, rising costs of repairs and renovations due to storm damage, depreciation in home values of flood-prone areas. We don't know if that's going to happen just yet, but there's certainly going to be some probably more changes in building codes and regulations to help improve storm resilience. Now, the state definitely has gotten better year after year after year, and we'll see if this happens too. Increased demand for inland properties as coastal areas become more vulnerable to hurricanes and flooding. Buyers are looking further inland where there's perceived less risk. We'll talk about that. And then delays in property transactions due to storm recovery efforts. I have that up in the pipeline next, so stick around. And then heightened buyer hesitancy in high risk hurricane zones. So basically meaning that are people still going to buy homes in areas that are prone? Are they going to be buying still close to the ocean, or are they going to be moving inland? So I pulled up the statistics. Let me share my screen real quick again. Thanks for sticking with me. I know this is not the most exciting topic of conversation, but I think it's important that you know what's going on statewide and locally. So these are the statistics for September. They are not out yet for October. They usually come out like the third week of the month for the prior month. So these are September stats, but that's okay. It still gives us some indication what happened after the last hurricane in August. So in Sarasota, single family homes only, closed sales were down about 14.2%. Now, I don't know if that specifically had to do with the hurricane, because there's no data that shows specifically because of the hurricane. So that was in Manatee County. And then in Sarasota County, closed sales were down 19.6%. So again, I can't really confirm for sure whether or not that was exactly hurricane related, but I pulled up some other stats, pulled these up this morning, and I went back to see the last 90 days because all three of these storms happened just about in the last 90 days. And again, I can't exactly correlate the stats that I'm going to give you that have to do specifically with the results of the hurricane, but in my professional opinion, it is probably highly likely. So I broke this down to Sarasota and Manatee County. It's single family homes and condos. There are a couple indications that you can see where things have changed. There is temporarily off the market, meaning a house was listed for sale. It came off of the multiple listing service, no longer listed for sale. And there were 46 of those that happened. I went and looked basically up and down the Gulf Coast from Anna Maria Island to the very north down to Venice, and like a mile or so inland. So basically anything that would have been on the Gulf and or on the bay. Now, of course, there are other areas that were definitely decimated by either flooding or rivers or just natural flooding in the area that were not in that little strip. But if you look at a map, you'll see what I mean. So these were homes and condos that were along the Gulf Coast or close to it. So in Manatee County, there were 46 properties to be temporarily off the market in the last 90 days. In Sarasota County, in this area, there were 79 properties to be temporarily taken off the market. Now, they could potentially be relisted again, or maybe it's just they're trying to figure out what the damage is. And then there's two other indications too. They're both withdrawn categories, meaning that it was listed for sale and then it was just withdrawn, not temporarily off the market, like it is not listed for sale. There's conditionally and unconditionally. I'm not going to bore you with the details, of that is at the moment. But in Manatee County, there were 178 properties to be withdrawn unconditionally. And in Sarasota County, 283 properties to be withdrawn unconditionally. That's an excessive amount of numbers. I don't have the stats to see what a normal is, but that's a tremendous amount of properties. That's almost 500, almost 500 properties to be removed unconditionally from being listed for sale. And then there's withdrawn conditionally, and there were 57 of those in Manatee County, and there were 120 of those in Sarasota County. But all said and done, that's like 2, 3, 4, that's like 500 or 600 properties that came off of the market for some reason or another. Again, these are along the coast. It's probably safe to assume that they had damage, or even if they didn't have damage. Like I was in Lido Key yesterday, and there's a lot of condos along the beach, 6-story buildings. Doesn't really look like the 6-story ones got flooded, but if the first 2 stories got flooded and you had your 6-story condo listed for sale, you can't access the property any longer, so you pull it off the market. That's what I mean by either temporarily off the market or withdrawn off the market. You can't just list it for sale because nobody can access it. So even if it wasn't damaged, you can't sell it because nobody can get to the property, if that makes sense. And then I also just got these statistics from our local multiple listing service, Stellar MLS, and they just started to release these this month, but I thought it was great. So this was for October 2024. And this is for the Florida MLS market report. And I thought this was interesting. So the active listings were actually up 28% over the same time last year. Is that storm related? I'm not necessarily sure. And new listings were down 17%. Pending sales were down 18%. Listings sold were down 12%. And then the days on the market, how long from the time it was listed to the time it sold, it's actually up 51% over the same time last year. So like I said, I was in Siesta Key and Lido Key yesterday. I was going to do a video for the channel. I wound up not doing my video in Siesta Key because the damage was just unbelievably overwhelming. Like for some reason or another, I'm not sure, maybe because it's in Lakewood Ranch and we don't see the damage. We see some damage, obviously, and there's debris on the road still here in Lakewood Ranch. But I think just because I've not been there, it's easy to forget like just how decimated the area has become. I took some video on the side of the road just so you can kind of see what the damage looks like. Lido Key was just still, like the roadways were just filled with sand. Like you can tell, like wind and rain and storm surge like just took the sand from the ocean and the beach and put it on the roads and into people's houses. It was pretty catastrophic. I want to show you this too, just really quick, just to kind of give you a little idea of what happened in our neck of the woods, which is Lakewood Ranch. We live here in Lakewood Ranch. Our office is here in Lakewood Ranch. And this is from September, right after the storm. East County was spared the devastation that Hurricane Helene wreaked on so many Florida communities. Really what we have seen in this area is a lot of downed trees, a lot of downed fences. I'm gonna have links in the description down below to all of these as well too. And a lot of pool cage damage. My best friend lives here in Lakewood Ranch, and their pool cage was damaged. This is what I was talking about. This is what a lot of the roads look like. This is piles of sand along both sides of Gulf of Mexico Drive on Longboat Key. That's kind of what Siesta Key looked like and Lido Key looked like. Siesta Key not as bad. But anyway, getting back to what I was talking about in Lakewood Ranch, they have been piling the debris, kind of like this picture here, but with all the trees, limbs. So it's a lot of tree damage, a lot of pool cage damage. There's some flooding, but for the most part, Lakewood Ranch was definitely spared. I do have this list of, if you're somebody who needs help, hopefully you've got some of these numbers already too, but it's just Florida State Assistance, FEMA, United Way, Disaster Legal Hotline, information if you are somebody who wants to volunteer and or donate. And again, I will put these links in the description down below. But it really has just been eye-opening to kind of do some research on this story, and I felt kind of an obligation to kind of share the story because I know a lot of us have short-term memory, especially if you don't live in the state that got decimated. So for those of you who maybe have second homes in Florida, you're thinking about moving to Florida, you love Florida, you vacation here, just kind of a reminder of what it's like today. This is mid-November when I'm recording this, probably be uploaded in another week or so, give or take, but the area is still really decimated. It's been a shock. So I appreciate you watching this video. I know it's not the typical video, but if you do want to see more like this, we're thinking about making more of this. And we do a live stream on Thursdays at 5 p.m. as well too. And that really is going to be more specifically to Lakewood Ranch in Sarasota, but we're also going to start talking about kind of nationwide issues and how they affect the country, drill down to how they affect Florida, and then drill down even more specifically as to how they affect our area, Sarasota, Lakewood Ranch. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home in this area, this is the area that we focus on: Sarasota, Lakewood Ranch, Bradenton. Generally speaking, the beautiful Gulf beaches. Of course, we still can help you there. But if that's you, my contact information is down below. If you do want to see more content or videos like this, do me a favor again, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, give me a yay or no, give me a thumbs up. Again, great for the algorithm. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks so much. See you next time.